Conversations with my father will be in 3 parts. Second chapter focuses on midlife. That will focus on my father's life in Long Island City. His building of the bar restaurant called Jackson Grill, his living here, and then going on to work as an art handler for a Long Island City-based operation for 7 years afterwards. I'm interested in pairing these conversations with the quote that runs around the perimeter of the sculpture. It reads, "For a long time, this neighborhood was about what will be, and now I think it's about what is." And that quote's taken from a New York Times article from 2017, and the quote's from a real estate developer who developed at least 2 of the properties that are around the perimeter of Court Square Park. And I was very interested in this quote and how nebulous it is, and that it's also contingent on establishing a past, present, and future in relationship to real estate prices and real estate speculation. And I wanted to pair that quote with these conversations with my father to root the conversations in a life lived versus something that's nebulous and isn't contingent on anything other than real estate speculation. For tonight, we're going to talk about midlife of Ed Keegan. And I wanted to start, for those of you that weren't here, for the first talk, we spoke about early life. So a figure that came up multiple times in conversation was Robert Moses, and a golf course that my father worked at from the age of 13 to 21. That was frequented by close associates of Moses, but Moses himself also attended, even though he wasn't a golfer, and played a role in what was then a private club being condemned and shut down and turned into a public course. So I wanted to pick up with that and to mention that, so The Power Broker, which is Robert Caro's book about Robert Moses and the development of New York as...
He won the Pulitzer Prize for that, by the way.
So that book was published in '74. And I was interested in the fact that at the time that you would have read that, you would have been in your mid to late 30s, living in Long Island with our family. I was not yet on the scene. And I was just curious, your recollection of living in the suburbs at the peak of white flight and move out to the suburbs from the city.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
And if you just, what recollections you have?
It was horrible. I mean, it was, no, I mean, to me, I don't know why people, you do so much of what we do in our lives or what's expected of us, and you have a family, and then you do this, and you buy a house, and it's got to be a certain size in a certain place. The only good part was, I liked, it was so convenient to the city, and I would drive in. Actually, I started by driving in to Long Island City, and I could make that in about a half hour, and park the car there and then go down the subway the way, and there was no talk of any of these places. And I got to like it a lot. I mean, I liked old neighborhoods. I was born in Brooklyn, I've traveled all over the world. I love Paris. I don't want to live any place other than New York. Even now, I don't. I can find a movie, I can get a bus, I can do whatever I want to do. And to me, nothing offers that the same way. And then I saw what it really was. It was a neighborhood. And I had, just prior to that, I got my mind, foolishly, I should have had a lobotomy. I wanted to open a bar, a restaurant. Okay? So at first I was going to do one in California. My brother was in California, and I went through a lot of things and I couldn't raise the money. It was too expensive. So I came home, and I was going to my car, and I said, the place on the corner, Vernon and Jackson, there's a bar there right now. It was an old bar then.
Vernon and Jackson, if you don't know it, is just a stone's throw over that way in Long Island City.
And I said, that'd be a good spot, and then you convince yourself into insanity. Next thing I know, tore it down, built it.
But before we're getting there, what year is this that you opened the bar?
That was 80, I'm going to say 84, 85.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what was the neighborhood like at that time?
Not that much
Because
different.
the City Corp was not yet built.
Yeah. City Corp was being built, okay? City Corp was being built, and as it was being built, they were letting people know through the businessmen that it was a big mistake. It was a disaster. It's been a disaster from day one as far as investment, okay? It's been empty. They've been using it mostly for executives and whatnot. But when that happened, all the people that came into my restaurant or bar, they were local people. And they hated it, and they said, it's going to ruin everything. Now, this is 85, so it's going to turn but then people would say, boy, this is going to be good for your business. Oh, because it's going to, I said, what's going to be good for my business if people are happy and they stay here? Because I can't compete with big places that are going to try and build something fancier. And this went on for quite some time. I opened the business. I lasted about 5 years, and it's a brutal business. So anytime you ever have any thoughts about opening a restaurant and bar, get a gun and, believe me, never do it. Never do it. I learned that much, at least, to never do it again. Right? And what happened was I went broke, and I was looking for a way to survive, and a customer who used to come in, she and her husband had picked up art from Sotheby's and Christie's. And she said, we have one of our truck drivers that picks it up is out on vacation or something. He's going to be out for 3 weeks. I'll give you $1,000 a week in cash if you drive and pick up this stuff. I never drove a truck. There was nobody else offering me anything. Sounded good. I stayed there 7 years. And they made a connection with PS1. They had a student program coming from England, Ireland, and Scotland that they would come and they would get them an apartment, and then they would work. They would work with me on the truck. And the reason I stayed 7 years, I met some of the most interesting people I have ever met, all young artists, some of whom have gone on to be extremely successful. But it really
and my father starred Gerard Byrne, who went on to represent Ireland in the Venice Biennale, was someone who worked with my father for, I don't know, about 4 years?
4 years.
And my dad co-starred in what was his first big video, playing Lee Iacocca.
It's online. You can.
Yeah, we'll send you all the Vimeo.
But I mean, those were an experience going from a white collar guy living in the suburbs, and I really liked this because it was obvious, or you can tell right away, that I like to talk, and they seemed to like to listen, or they thought they had to. That may have been part of it. But I had such an introduction to art, especially contemporary art, that I knew nothing about. And I always remembered people that I knew.
Tell everybody, just to rewind, tell everybody what it was that you did. So you drove the truck, and what did you do? Where did you go?
We went and we went to Christie's in the morning if there was a sale, and big sales, we would pick it up, take it back to Long Island City here, build crates for it, pack it, and then ship it out. And I saw things that I had never seen before. I remember seeing, what's his name?
Salvador Dali?
No, Dot.
Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock.
Uh-huh.
I remember people saying, who I knew, I said, Jackson Pollock, that's the guy that throws up. And then when I saw his work, I almost fainted. Honest to God, it was so unbelievable that somebody could make this. And that was really my introduction, like a lot of people, to contemporary art. And if you want to learn, or you want to listen, or are you interested in something different other than, pretty pictures, there's so much out there.
So I want you to tell everyone what's one of my favorite stories. So you worked for, the company was called Modern Art Services, and they were located quite close by and closed, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, something like that. So if you can recall, and I'll help you if not, tell everyone a story about the pizza cook at the restaurant that you frequented who was a big fan of Salvador Dali. Do you recall this story?
No.
I'll facilitate. So
some of that comes from a set of seizures I had 3 years ago.
So
memory.
My dad worked for this outfit that was local, but they used to go to Williamsburg for lunch, and they mastered something that my dad called the no lunch lunch, which was taking a lunch hour but not saying that they were taking lunch so they could get paid for lunchtime. And one of the places that they went, we'll cut that from the record. One of the places that they would go to was an Italian restaurant in Long Island City called La Locanda. And at the time, there was a pizza chef. And the pizza chef knew that they were working doing art handling. And he told them, you know who I really love is Salvador Dali. And so my father filed it away in his brain. And at one point, they moved a Salvador Dali painting from Sotheby's or Christie's. But before bringing it to the warehouse, they took a detour so that the pizza chef, whose name I won't recall, could see a Salvador Dali up close and personal for the first time in his life.
Just to see his expression, and it was worth every bit of it. I mean, it was the excitement. I mean, he was swooning. Here was this guy in a pizza thing throwing pizzas around, and that's the effect and impact that art can have on people. If, show your kids, let everybody try it, let them see it. Doesn't mean you have to like everything, but to me, it's like it opens a door in your mind, and that was such an experience. I ended up, as I said, I stayed 7 years. I had fun. I liked the people I was working with. I look forward to going to work. I just said to somebody, who was the one I can't stand, the artist.
Oh, Julian Schnabel.
Yeah, Julian Schnabel, yes. I hated, I just didn't like the way he talked to the people that worked for him. I got whatever, and it goes from childhood. Anybody bullying anybody else, I can't stand it. And he's still obnoxious. I don't care how. So he had this big thing. When you come to my place, there's a big thing. Don't ring the bell before 10 a.m. So I'm with two other guys. We're going to unpack a big crate, and I hated his art too. And I rang it at 10 o'clock, and he came out in a smoking jacket, a gold smoking jacket. He wanted to know who, he was going to intimidate somebody, and he had picked the wrong person. But then he kept it up. I said, all right, guys, let's go. And a screw gun, I was opening a crate. And he started, and he just said, I will not tolerate that noise in my apartment. I said, let's go, guys. I left everything there, and I went back. And I told my boss, it's okay. If he wants it, you don't have to, take that kind of crap from him. No, and the funny part, in 7 years I worked, I had no major damage that I know of. I'm nothing that broke, except a huge piece of his that had sold for $600,000. And I picked it up. I don't know if you're familiar with any of his work, but at this time he was doing
the plates.
Like plates, it was horrible. But they were huge pieces. And I went to pick it up at Sotheby's. And the reason I say this, it wasn't indifference, the reason for it happening. And we went up the elevator to the 7th floor, and 2 of the Sotheby guys, they put it on an A-frame, wheeled it to the
Lift gate.
and then we took it down, and we were responsible at that point. One thing went in my mind, I said to the guy I was with, I said, I'm going to put up straps in the truck, prepare it. And we had it on the A-frame. So we took it and and the other one went over. The A-frame wouldn't hold it. So this is what I mean by having a good boss, though. She said, you didn't do it deliberately, did you? She said, I would just laugh, that's all. But it was, she said, no, she knew. I had seen these other people, so I was assuming they knew what they were doing. And then I had been told to sweep everything up. And it took about 6 months, we sent it to Switzerland to have it and that was, I kind of got a lot of enjoyment out of that too. I ultimately have met his son, and he's just as obnoxious as
So I want to rewind just to, if you can tell people of when you're working at the bar for the 5 years and then also living here for the following 7 years as doing art handling, what was the neighborhood like? Who were the people that were frequenting the bar? What was the kind of sense of this place over that 10 plus year time period?
One thing they never did, they were always talking about they were going to have a supermarket. They never had a supermarket. And then when they built the first building down on, on the water.
The first high rise.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I remember calling my brother. It was built by somebody I worked for when I was in law school. And I called him up, and one of my brother was very rich, and I wanted him to buy an apartment there. He'd have it when he came in from California, and it was $150,000. Well, I needn't tell you whatever he bought. It was, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But the people were neighborhood people. And what happened, every time there was another write-up, and this happened frequently, because of the closeness to the city and all what it offered and people, and you could run back and forth, everybody thought, I know guys, a dozen guys had opened bars or restaurants, fancy, all along Vernon Boulevard. Everybody thought they were going to make a fortune.
So who was going to the bar then? Who was coming to the bar restaurant? Who were the local people that were actually staying and frequenting it?
They were just mostly blue-collar guys, That was after I ended up putting most of the police out. I was right across from the police station. And if you can live with that, you can live with anything. So I ended up with only one policeman was allowed in. But the bar was what I wanted. It just wasn't, I couldn't make enough of a living. And I worked so hard. It was unbelievable. And you have a relative who was a nephew of mine, Roy. Mm-hmm. And after we closed, he went and opened a little bar in the city called Flight 151.
Leave it to my cousin to open the only straight bar in Chelsea. But he's had a lot of success. So he came to me and he said, I'm thinking of opening another one just like it, but uptown. So he said, I want you to look at a place. I'm looking at a place now. And the rent, and this was more than 25 years ago, the rent was $78,000 a month. Now, at both the other places, he was paying $1,200 a month in rent. But that's what happens. If you got rich somewhere else and you had deep pockets and you could afford to keep putting money in, it's one thing. But the neighborhood was made up of mostly, blue-collar workers, and the houses haven't changed. If you go up and down, like the 47th and 48th Street and all of those, they're the same.
And the people are the same. I find one of my customers owns a bar out by me. And I'm in Middle Village. And, he came up and we just talked about it. And I don't know anybody when they were talking about Amazon coming in here. Nobody that I knew wanted it. Now, I'm sure there was some, but none of the people, because most of them had been here for a long time. In some cases, their families before them. They weren't impressed by the word Amazon, the job, whatever it was. They made their living and they saw everything where a big company came in, it was never the same. And they weren't having anything to do with it. In fact, when a woman, Alexandria Otero,
Ocasio-Cortez.
when she was first came on in the limelight, I thought she was fantastic because I loved the way she talked, smart, said what she had on her mind. She was the kind of person, even then, that would be off, telling people, you don't want to sell it now just because you're going to get a little bit more. Because wherever you go, you're going to pay more money, and your life is never going to be the same. And that stuck with me so much. And it went through a difficult time for me, going broke, surviving, all of that stuff. Getting divorced in between after.
It was a busy couple of years.
Yeah.
But you also, when you started working, doing art handling, you also functioned as a kind of father figure for a lot of these younger artists that were coming from Scotland and Ireland. So in addition to you learning about the art that they were making and having this kind of day in, day out relationship to seeing how an artist has a life, what it requires to maintain, you were also functioning as a kind of surrogate father since their families
I
were abroad.
That role because I liked young people like that, were enthusiastic, and it works both ways. I was getting a lot out of it. We still have, well, I wouldn't say, I don't see them they live in Ireland and all over. But like, one of them called and I was at Matt's watching his cats and said, hey, you're going to be there? I got my son, I've never seen him. And he came with his wife and, we had visits and every day was something interesting. We talked about things that were important to them. Believe it or not, I could listen when somebody was telling me something that was interesting, and they were all from different countries. And
so at what point in working as an art handler did you move to Williamsburg? How far in was that?
That was about 5 years in.
Yeah.
What happened was somebody needed the apartment that I had, and instead they wanted more money. Is all they had to do. Said they wanted more money. Instead they said, oh, my daughter needs the apartment, because then he knew legally that's what they could do. So I just went out and I stopped in a coffee shop and I said, if you know anybody has an apartment, let me know. Next day I came back. That was 16 years ago, and a woman said, my aunt, who's 97 now, is my landlady, and I've been there ever since. And it's just the two of us in the place, and she looks after me. When I told my son when I dropped the clicker for the TV, she calls me, are you all right, Ed? And I have a key to go into our place. If I don't see her for a few days, I go up the back and I yell to her. But it's getting tougher and tougher because she's getting, her hearing is worse than mine. So by the time we're almost in each other's face by the time. But all of these things have been fantastic adventures. And in between, I have 4 children from 50, what's King going to be, 58?
She'll be 58 in October, yeah.
58, another one 2 years younger. Then I have a son, 53, and then the baby. And no, I mean, I don't understand why people have children and then are not interested in having an involvement with them, or just being friends. You can learn so much. And you also see all of the negative things that you passed on. I live in Middle Village. I live in a two-family house, and this woman bought it for $14,000 many years ago. And it's worth, she said she was offered $750,000. And, I said, where are you going to go? I mean, first of all, your whole life is here. It's not going to change my life. I mean, I'll find another place. It doesn't have to be there. But I know that's what's going to happen. It's going to happen because it has transportation, wonderful access to public transportation, bus, train, the best. And now it's gone from one zone place where people like in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, they love that. Bedford going down big and you go into the city. Everybody likes that. But then you can't afford it. And people to me, are always looking for, socialization, companionship, people that have other interests, that they have, and that is taken away so quickly. You immediately, for example, most of the people, the rents you're talking about in any of these places, at least $2,500 a month for an apartment.
$3,500 for a one bedroom.
All right, $3,500. Most of the people I know who live here couldn't afford that now. I mean, they could sell off their house, refinance, and not interested in doing it. They're interested in they like to come home, they eat out, they have a little place they like. That's what I was hoping to have when I opened my place. Okay? Didn't work out. Minetta's? Yeah. When I was living here, and I walked over, and just the way I like to talk, the father building the place, and he said, "Want me to teach you how to lay tiles?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay." He showed me how to do it. They're the same tiles are still there. I laid more. But when I was broke and I wanted to have a party for my daughter who was getting married, he said, "You laid the tiles." I remember. Those are the kind of things that make a neighborhood. Or you go into a druggist and a drugstore and you don't have the money for the copay, whatever it is, and the guy says, "Don't worry about it. You're going to get through." That's what a neighborhood is about, and that's for me. I mean, that's what I have where I am. A lot of little stores, and it'll change. But this place, they really hung on. And as I said, I was very, very happy when that young woman who, I always forget her name. Ocasio-Cortez. She kind of took up part of the battle, and I like people like that. I like people that irritate. As soon as you know they're irritating, big fat old white men, you know you're doing something right.
Okay, that's a good note to end on.
Thank you.